Can I just say, those people that are doing the diploma, we've got RSL there in the back, and we're just going to organise a quick chat after we've done the industry panel, before you actually go live on stage. So I'll just find us a little room to do that. So I'd like to say a massive, massive thank you to this lovely, lovely panel with all the beautiful colours, white shirts. And over to Andrew.
Hello. Can I just confirm that video is sorted now, is it? All good. Brilliant. So my name's Andrew Ferguson. I'm the founder of Education and Bass. I've been a DJ and producer for 25 years. Just very briefly, my story was leaving education with no qualifications, but returning back to education later on in life to find a new love for it, but realizing that due to my mental health, I was unable to learn in the traditional way. So Education and Bass was founded off the back of, like-minded DJs and producers that have also got similar stories that have come together to help support and wave the flag for those in a similar situation or that were in a similar situation to ourselves. We're here on behalf of a project today called Heritage Sounds, which is funded by Arts Council England, whereby we're celebrating, educating and re-educating on the music of Black origin. So for me personally, coming through kind of sound system culture, rave music, and being a part of a genre called jungle from its early beginnings, jungle being a boiling pot of genres, an amalgamation of music of Black origin, funk, soul, blues, jazz, reggae, dub, and being around that for, over 2 decades, I realised the importance of kind of educating and re-educating on those, on that heritage. For me as a teacher, to teach, for example, the likes of tape delay, what better place to go and teach that than kind of the likes of King Tubby and Lee Scratch Perry, where they kind of took and innovated these techniques, and then that's then spilt off and inspired a generation of producers. So for me, it was natural to just tap into the origins of world music and show people the purest form of techniques and styles and contributions to the world of music. And that's what the Heritage Project is all about. We've got some great guest artists on board to support it. We're currently writing 3 courses. One's on sample-based culture, hip-hop, which we've got Naji here, who's going to be supporting that. We've got sample-based culture based on jungle, drum and bass, where Digital's creating a course on that, who's, I'll let him say a bit about himself in a second, but sustained a really substantial career in the music industry by kind of waving the flag for his origins and kind of keeping that momentum throughout the years. And we've also got a reggae singer called Wavey that's been a part of the reggae scene for a number of years as a vocalist, and he's seen the evolution of the music and seen what that music has done to contribute, again, towards world music. We've actually got a video to play you from the Heritage Sounds project that we'll play first, and then we'll introduce the panel.
My name's Soweto Kinch, jazz saxophonist and MC. I'm a jazz musician, I love the jazz, but I also like to relate different genres, and the more I play jazz, the more I practice as a hip-hop MC and do other things, I realise how interconnected all these things are, right? I'm sure all of you, especially this generation, you're used to listening to multiple genres, and the idea that you just belong to one tribe, who's the indie kids and the hip hop and the drill kids, and hopefully some of those ideas are collapsing into each other now, so you can't really tell the difference between forms of music. It's just good or bad. The idea of studying heritage as a specific thing, and specifically with Black British dance music, hip-hop and grime, is really important. Heritage, well, that's why we're here, right? Nothing comes out of a vacuum, right? Everything has some sort of foundation and roots to it. All of our urban city centres, have made music, made a musical culture sometimes around just that one day in which there's Nottingham Carnival or Bristol Carnival, but they've led to incredibly vibrant subcultures. And it's impossible to be somebody involved in bass music and not be influenced, even if you don't realise it yourself. Nottingham is one of the cities, much like Birmingham, with such a proud sound system culture and carnival culture, particularly with Black British music, but other forms of music too. We're reinventing the wheel every time. Music with staying power, with real longevity, I think is very much aware of its heritage and celebrates its heritage. If I make musical pronouncements, then I want them to be here in 20, 30 years' time. So the best way to do that is to connect yourself with the vein of history that's been here before. It gives your music greater gravity and hopefully greater meaning. What's really significant about it as an idea is that, I guess in an age when music is really accessible through streaming and to some extent a lot more disposable, I don't know how much time people are spending scratching beneath the surface. Stay open-minded, there's always something to learn from those who've come before you and those who are coming after you. Yeah. All right, so like I said, this ain't no spectator sport thing. Can we move the chairs back to the edge of the room? There's so much creativity already happening and such a buzz that these young people are able to connect so soon after lockdown. There feels like really positive creative energy here, and that makes my job really easy, which is just hopefully encouraging them and pointing them in specific directions to enhance and make what they've done even more resonant.
Catch me in a rebellious form when I rap from the core like I haven't before. It's like I'm new to the sport. Pass me the ball, pass me the bat, and I'm running for gold. I may not connect with your orcs or be up in afford, but I can afford to jump in diamonds, influencing younger youth to keep on driving, aspire to keep inspiring. Fight is what I spit, no saliva. Like David, I can fight the lie. If my mum told me kill them with my kindness, but I ain't in the face smiles. So much rather work in my silence. You know what to say about the quiet, deadly, like Kermit. I've been sipping on my Tetley, minding my business, but if you want to step up my business, just know I will sort out your business.
I've really enjoyed my time here actually, very receptive to what I do, which is always great when people are interested in your approach. Can we start again? Sorry. I've heard such a tremendous variety of different forms of music, a really wide range of musics, including some rock, some disco-inspired funk, house, straight up hip-hop trap. I don't mind this, it's alright, it's cool.
Definitely be good to experiment and
Hell yeah. See what happens.
With.
It's idiosyncratic, it's like you. It's discovering stuff, isn't it? The same way when you discover a sample on the thing you just described or in a record shop or something.
Definitely.
You want to run it again? I've heard probably the happiest, most joyful rap verse I've ever heard. Just made me want to like skip down the street with joy. It was just brilliant and refreshingly like different. It wasn't the normal screw-face urban energy that we're being encouraged to think is the only way to make rap music, you know. And what I've tried to encourage them to do, and I've seen them already do, is to put their unique, quirky personalities into their music. There's no point someone telling me in real confidence that they might struggle with a degree of autism or a degree of just personality things that are quirky, and then not putting that into their music. Like, that's the power of certainly hip hop and jazz, is to turn these things that are conventionally considered weaknesses into absolute strengths, to find those things that are most distinctive about you and find a way of describing that and to bring people into your world. And that's what I'm seeing taking place here.
I'm gonna get good, be a better man, as long as I keep sticking to the rest of my plan.
Yeah, so that was
good
Danny.
timing,
That's
man.
my verse.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear you, bro.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's been a pleasure having you down there.
No, man, my pleasure. It's great hearing you. Well done, people. Thanks for your
These are all the future.
Yeah. Sweet.
It's been a pleasure having you down there.
No, man, my pleasure. It's great hearing
Rewind. Reload. So, Soweto summed it up quite nicely then. Nothing comes from nothing, and I always say everything's a remix, right? So our brain responds to stimuli, so anything that we do creatively is done through things that we accumulate, memories, ideas, feelings, experiences. I'm going to go around the panel now, but I'll ask each panelist to introduce himself, but I'll also ask the first question. So Soweto, first of all, welcome and thank you very much for your contribution towards this project. So I'll ask you to introduce yourself, and also the question, to what extent do you find that young people are aware of the music heritage that influences them?
Cool. I'm Soweto Kinch, movie star, saxophonist, MC. So 1 foot in both hip hop and jazz camps. Thanks for turning the mic down a tad. In terms of whether young people are aware of their musical inheritance, I think it's exciting that on the one hand they are more aware, given streaming and the ability to just look things up really quickly. But often I'm excited by the fact that they don't know that this pattern that's being used has come via trap from some New Orleans thing, via Jamaica, and the fact that often the musical ingredients are hard to detect makes it interesting, makes it an interesting challenge for young people to work out like why they like the things that they do. And rather than just being the history buff, which I am as well, just saying check this out, I like to say don't close your ears off to anything, because you'd be surprised, you know, how much osmosis, how many forms of music influence each other. You know, I grew up in Handsworth. If you grew up in parts of Nottingham, I'm sure it's the same, where the sound of dol drums, Bhangra, Punjabi community is really strong, sound system stuff's really strong. And I can't say that that hasn't influenced. I don't make Bhangra. I don't know Jazzy B like that. But I'm sure that it's in my music, in my beat making in some way, because that's just how I've grown up. So listen to everything, take in everything.
Thank you. Raff?
Yes, I'm Raff Renzo, music producer over 2 decades, grime, dubstep, drum and bass, and work for education and bass as an educator and partnerships manager and a few other things too. So I think for me, I can speak from my own experience. When I was first introduced to jungle when I was like 13, 14 years old, I had no idea about its heritage, where it came from. On reflection now, yes, it was a lot of black music in my life from a very young age. Not only the stuff that I chose to sort of listen to myself, but stuff that I was exposed to. My dad, my mum, my sister was a massive 90s R&B fan. My mum loved Tina Turner. She loved the Supremes, Bob Marley, Ken Booth. I used to hear all that stuff. And even then, it was just a part of my life, you know. And as I've grown up, I've really sort of tapped into that more and embraced that side of it, because culture is a beautiful thing, you know. And even the town that I grew up in was multicultural. From, you know, I'm actually Italian. You know, my family moved over here when I was I was born here. My family moved over. Dad was 20, mum was 10, whatever. All my friends in Bedford, Jamaican, African, Indian, everything. And I'm so grateful for that, because I have a bit of all of that culture in my music, whether it's subconsciously, consciously. Like even when I sample vocals for my music, I reach for them 90s R&B bands. I reach for Brandy. I reach for Brownstone. I reach for Erykah Badu. I reach for... Pull that one out, didn't I? Aretha Franklin, the work, and that is my go-to. It's not like, oh, I want to do this. It's ingrained in me, you know. And from a personal thing, it's an amazing thing, which I'm truly grateful for. And I think now, a lot more with social media and stuff, you know, whether it's Soweto said with Spotify and streaming, it's a lot more that to sort of help identify that, you know, music for aspiring artists and stuff.
Cool. Steve?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Carr, digital. My mic on?
Yeah, you are, mate.
Yeah, digital, like a drum-based jungle producer, come up through sound system culture, and my dad had a sound system or whatever. Used to be a reggae DJ and heard a few reggae bits and pieces in raves and stuff, rave music, and sort of got into it, rave music through that. Yeah, been around like 20, 30 years, lots of releases in the drum-based scene and whatever, and went into education again, master's degree in audio production, so I thought this was a couple of years ago, so sort of get my knowledge up a little bit, so I was self-taught. But anyway, yeah, the question, what was the question again?
I'm glad you asked that, because I was going to say the same thing. I was like, oh.
So to what extent do you find that young people are aware of the musical heritage that influenced them, and the music they listen to, I guess?
Okay,
as well?
I think it's a big, deep rabbit hole kind of thing, because when you start looking at stuff, it blows my mind, so yeah. I don't really know. But I do realise, like, you know, when I was at university, in fact, like, there's a lot of when you start researching stuff because you like the track or whatever. It literally, like, say if you like Michael Jackson or something, you start looking into his music. He loves James Brown, and do you know what I mean? It's just like some big rabbit hole or whatever. So, yeah, I think it's interesting, like, to research and look into the music you like, because you'll be surprised. I mean, I'm into sampling and stuff, and that just blows my mind, and I get to learn a lot about the music I love, like hip hop, reggae is a lot of adaptation of songs and whatever in reggae, country music and all kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, I'm not really sure about the awareness, but I know it's a deep hole, which is a very interesting one, so it's worth looking down. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Frankie.
Hi, I'm Frankie. I'm a drum and bass producer and also a teacher, qualified teacher. I've been kind of working in music now for years. My background was more classical piano, and then I fell in love with kind of raving, I suppose, and it all went from there. In terms of with the question, I mean, I'm quite lucky in the sense that I've actually been in and out of various different schools and colleges and universities, so my teaching's kind of taken me through, you know, all ages, learning music or experiencing music. And I think for me, I think, as Digital said, it's that question of, you know, awareness, but for some, it might be that they're from quite musical families and they have that history that's being taught and passed down, and then for others, and it is sometimes I'm always really surprised when someone says something and you're like, oh, I wouldn't have expected you to know that. And I think that's always nice, but I do feel that, you know, it can be difficult to know everything, can't it? And music sort of come from so many different places.
Nope.
So I think they just lost me. Yeah, music's come from so many different places, and I think, you know, to try and pinpoint, you know, exact influence and heritage, often it is like we've kind of said a mishmash of all of these amazing things. So I think that the fact that people are trying to be more aware is positive. But I don't feel that, I feel even I'm probably should educate myself more. And I think that's important as well, to sort of be open to the sense of, I don't know everything yet. I will try my best to learn everything, but I think that's an impossible task, which is why we do what we do.
Yep. Thank you, Frankie. Naji.
Hi, my name's hi, my name's Naji, known as Wavey. It's my nickname. It's been my nickname for like 40 odd years, way before the slang. I'm just glad that it's a cool meaning now.
Yeah, it could have been worse.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I'm a hip hop producer. I've been making beats for pretty much most of that 40 years. Got into teaching. And being a music tutor, working in community music, grassroots music, that first stage of everyone's kind of pathway through their immediate environment, experimenting, exploring music. It's a sector I work in. So to answer the question, I think young people now absorb music a lot differently to our generation. And I think that in itself means that you're probably not going to, well, it kind of works both ways. You're not going to be exposed to the transitions of styles to the next as much as our generations did, because we grew up with certain music around us, and so we would seek out, you'd hear it on the radio, then you're going to have to seek out that song. There's no Google, there's no Shazam. You've got to leave your yard, go to a record shop and find the record. And then you've got to hope that you know what it's called, because you're there humming to the guy. Have you got the tune that goes... And so the way you would absorb music, and so I think there was a lot more kind of effort required back then to join the dots of music. But in my journey teaching, like for instance, if we was to do a sampling workshop, I'd bring out records, and some of the young people are so young, they probably haven't seen a record and say, oh, it's a massive CD. It's not a CD. Yeah, this is a record. And then there's a whole science behind records as well that is very interesting. And so it's an opportunity to speak on those things. So I think, to kind of summarize, I think that you get a certain amount of young people that, if they're that interested, they will seek it out, and they will probably be very interested in how the dots actually join from styles. It's the styles going backwards, and they probably didn't realize how much certain styles influenced other styles that led to new styles, which led to what they listen to now. And it would just be a complete, like, they would just not make those kind of connections. So I think it's important that young people, if they're into the music, to learn the history, and they'll be surprised in what they'll learn. So even when we as teachers go back and we're doing whatever preparations, and we're going back and doing a little brief research, oh, I forgot about that tune. And you forgot that members of that band left, and then they had other careers and then made new music, and you remind yourself of the connectivity of music and styles and artists and such. So yeah, I think young people really do need to, explore as far back as you can. You never know what you're going to learn.
Can I chat quick, because I would have thought of a better answer, but maybe you want to move on.
No, this is all a part of it. Yeah.
I've just been doing this history project for the past couple of years based on my last album, looking at the black presence in Britain 100 years ago. The fact that there were race riots in Manchester, Salford, Hull, Glasgow, Cardiff, places I didn't even know there were enough black people to have race riots 100 years ago. So part of the issue, it's interesting as you describing your parents and families' love of black music, that goes right the way through. A lot of my multiracial friends just love the music. But there has been a systematic desire to underplay or undervalue the contributions of black people in general. That's well beyond music. And I'm just very aware that throughout the city centres of Cardiff, for example, or Salford, those black communities that were there were systematically wiped out, and they built shopping centres and so forth and stuff over it. So that, to me, is a really interesting dynamic, and it suggests that if you want to be a better musician, if you want to be congruent and not feel weird about liking music from people that you despise, it's best to sort of get over those insecurities and to recognise. It was Donny McClassen, a great jazz musician, said this to me. He had a profound reflection that a lot of his favourite saxophonists, John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, they wouldn't have been considered human beings. They weren't treated as human beings at the time that they were creating this great music. And it troubled him, but it also made him reflective that there's something deeper and more human to search for in the music. So that's important.
Thanks for that, Soweto. So I guess a takeaway is certainly, as aspiring artists here, digging deep and tracing things back certainly contribute greatly towards kind of inspiration, creativity. As we've said, nothing comes from nothing, so kind of ideas and tracing things back is definitely a pure way to do it, and I think it's important. So on that note then, first of all, thank you to the young people that helped with the questions. These questions were written by the young people that are taking the Heritage Sound project. As I talked about at the beginning, the likes of King Tubby and Scratch Perry, which those of you who in here makes beats or produces music on a computer, okay, I know a lot of us here do. We just we're there with a producer, engineer. Now, before the likes of Tubby and Perry, the producer was the person that just sat behind the mixing console and was barely even credited. Certainly not a person that was at the forefront. And, until they started to use kind of effects and the mixing board and the effects units as their instruments, and then from that, dub music was born, where vocals were actually accidentally missed out from a dub plate that was being cut for a sound clash. And then from that day on, the dub version was born, and then literally every record for years, even in pop music, had an instrumental, which was essentially the dub version. So what artists do you know of, or situations that have contributed greatly towards something we know right now that you feel is important for the young people to know? I'll start with Steve Digital.
I was hoping you didn't
so
say
much.
me.
Wait, let me think.
Just one that jumps out.
One that jumps out for me is, you know, the whole MC thing, the whole fast stuff, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Daddy
Guy
Philly.
called Peter King.
Peter King, yeah.
Peter King. So he was on Saxon Sound System, innit? Yeah, so with the Saxon lot and that, he was before Papa San and all that as well. So like, this guy, a guy called Peter King who's come from sound system culture, was in a sound system called Saxon. And yeah, he originated that style, which is used, I don't know, throughout hip hop, reggae, all kind of songs.
Wasn't there a lot of controversy? Comanche Sly was credited with creating that style
Yeah.
as well, isn't it?
Is it?
Oh, maybe I'm
I
wrong.
don't know, and Papa San from Jamaica as well, but it's always down to Peter. I mean, if you, I was, to be honest, I was with YT and Tipper Irie the other day as well, and Ricky Rankin, like some old school
legends.
Yeah, legends, and they were all saying it as well. Plus, all over Google, but they were saying it too. You know, doing this documentary thing. So they were saying now it's Peter King, it's Peter King. So and yeah, his you know, everyone uses that style. You know, loads of different genres. So yeah.
It's basically
Peter King,
we got that from, innit? Many.
Yeah, all that business. Yeah, all that fast thing. Yeah.
So for me, those sorts of things, when I talk about when I'm teaching, I know a lot of us here are educators as well, when you tap back to the essence and the roots of those things and get it in its purest form, it's where I feel you can find the kind of undiluted version of stuff, or the unevolved version of stuff, where you can tap into the origins and then pull that back forward and introduce that to your melting pot of creativity.
Make your own thing up from that, instead of making it from something else, which just come like years later, go back to the source,
and
do your own thing.
I find that with production tips and everything, but, so Naji, let me go to you on that one, please.
Yeah, I think it's one of those kind of like fractal patterns. You go further back and back, and it just keeps going back and back. Like, where hip-hop is concerned, it's widely understood and credited to people like Kool Herc for inventing hip-hop. But what we have to remember is there was a whole scene that these DJs, people like Herc, Grandmaster Flash, Theodore, these people, there was a scene that was existing outside of the Bronx, in Queens, in Brooklyn. Again, sound system culture. All these different sound systems were running from like mid-60s, you know, through up until the early 70s, and it was those guys that influenced Flash, Herc, and all these guys to do what they were doing, and eventually kind of changed the way the equipment was used to make new things happen, like you were just saying how with Scratch Perry and the likes, how they were kind of using the mixing desk as an instrument. It's a similar thing with how we get to where turntablism is now, from going from something that just played records to something that you would use to play on the record, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah, using that piece of equipment as an instrument rather than just a piece of equipment, and then a whole vibe, culture developed from doing that. So yeah.
So who was it, Flash or Herc, that invented sampling, the merry-go-round? Because there's this ongoing debate.
The politically correct answer would be that the merry-go-round is credited to Kool Herc. What's credited to Flash would be what he called the peekaboo system, which would allow you to use two turntables, but hear that turntable before everyone else did, and allow you to cue it up for that turntable. So you could find a break on that turntable, get it ready while that break is playing, and then bring it in without it being all flummoxed together, kind of thing.
So, glad he thought of that, because there'd be a lot of clanging mixing going on if he didn't these days. Like.
And again, even with that, there are DJs like people like DJ Flowers and these kind of DJs from I think he was from Queens. Those guys, or Brooklyn. I said, Theodore, they didn't invent scratching. We was doing that long before to try and, cue up our songs. That's what it was. That's what we did. We just scratch the record to cue it up, and then we bring it in. So influences from far back. It gets all fractal. You get back to where you think, this is where it started. Then you realise actually these guys were influenced by these set of guys, and then it just goes back and back and back. So it's interesting.
Yeah. There's that whole Master Flowers, the Brooklyn people that gave the Bronx people inherited. Absolutely, it's interesting that often those people are overlooked because it's easy just to concentrate on one sort of icon. But in MC terms, it's interesting. I had a chat with Curtis Blow a long time ago, and as someone as an innovator in rhyme, like the breaks, one of the early people to ever do this, with that style of rap that we don't really do anymore. But it's interesting that...
do that again.
Just say rah in the middle of a verse for no reason. But
just to fill the gap, fill the space.
I've still got a little bit of that 80s MC in me. But what's interesting was listening to his references, because there was, by everyone's estimation, KRS talks about this, there's only like 5, 6 MCs at the time who were really writing their own rhymes, weren't just copying everyone else, Casanova Fly, like real innovators. And Curtis Blow said, the first thing that came to me with that question was the fact that Cab Calloway and Louis Armstrong were some of the biggest influences on rap music that don't get acknowledged. Hardy, 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 ho. Say again? Pygmy, the comedian, Babs, the female comedian as well, a lot of those comedians. But yeah, he released a whole record of speaking over drums, of course, Gil Scott-Heron and all those things. But the thing specifically with Curtis Blow that I found interesting, he drew on everything. He listened to Churchill, Winston Churchill speeches. And when you hear that style of rap, it makes a lot of sense. He was studying Martin Luther King and the inflections in his voice and trying to generate that much interest. And I think it's interesting, if we paired back our craft as MCs, rappers or singers, to the essence, rather than after a whole lot of Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston and stuff, actually, if you were just the first person trying this, who would you draw on? And he said cartoon characters. I can't remember the specific ones, Yosemite Sam, I think, and Churchill. But imagine studying Churchill for like inflections, and I found that really interesting. I certainly wouldn't think that Winston Churchill made his way into hip hop.
That's crazy.
Turning in his grave.
I think it just goes to show, this is one thing that I always say when I'm teaching, particularly with composition and things, like draw influence from everything. The outside world is there, and people talk quite a lot about writer's block and things like that. And I say, just go out, do something, see the world, and draw whatever influence you can find with it. And I think that kind of just expresses that a little bit more, that you can find your influence in many things.
Yeah, it's really important. Raff, anyone or any kind of thing that is kind of for you, whether it be, obviously, because you were a big part of the early grime movement, first generation grime, was there any kind of thing there that stood out for you as kind of really paving the way for what we know now?
I'd say the one thing I know about the grime scene is that it was street culture, but black street culture from London. And that was it was almost like, it was the epitome of it. It's what made it what it was, Like even the crew that we had, Macabre Unit, there was 20 of us, and it was me and Nina and another DJ, which were the white guys, and the rest were all black and mixed race lads, And it was, for me, it was, again, kind of growing up in Bedford, it was normal. There wasn't anything that sort of I thought, I feel a bit out of place. It just was what it was. And I think that's what's made it sort of so special, that sound, and the artists and stuff that are involved in it. It just kind of, I don't know, it just. It
was a voice, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was a complete movement. It was more than just music, And I think that's the one thing with grime that is so powerful, and maybe because it had such a sort of strong, sort of presence about it that is kind of still in that same place, that it doesn't progress. And unfortunately, a lot of the artists sort of change direction slightly to sort of maybe further themselves, in like their careers. but grime is still powerful. The one thing I was going to say before you asked me that, and I was sitting here thinking, if there's one artist that I feel has really just cut through the middle ever since I was a little kid, right till the present day, and really kept the heritage there in all of his music, and that's Shy FX. I truly feel that everything he's done is, first and foremost, he's made music, much like yourself, that's changed the course of the genre, yeah? And he's always kept that sound. Like, even now, there's a new track that's being played. I heard Rodigan playing, I think some of the other drum and bass artists are playing it. And it just drops, and it doesn't change his sound to fit in it. It's just, and it's always got the black culture in there. You can hear it, and it just absolutely works. It's just, I was going to say something else there, a bit more. Really, really good. Yeah. And yeah, for me, I think grime, yeah, it's more than just the music, you know. It's so much more. And Shy FX is long may it continue, because yeah, from the very first track that he did when I was a little kid, right up to this new thing I'm hearing people play right now, it's just there, man. You know. So yeah, he's someone that jumps to mind. As just kept it moving. You know.
Cheers. So how do we then teach people to? Obviously, I think teaching heritage, educating, re-educating is an important thing. But how do we teach creatives, and we all do this here, I think, to consider it? And you've talked here about kind of, you know, Frankie not getting writer's block and going to listen to different types of music. Soweto said, even if you maybe don't like it initially, go and listen to something to find inspiration. How do we teach people to consider looking in these other areas without simply copying it, but to integrate it into what they do? And I know we all do that. I know, Steve, a big part of kind of your sound is what you grew up with, and you openly say that quite a lot. And how have you integrated that without blatantly just copying it, but using it as your signature sound?
For me, it's quite simple, because like I say, you know, like you say, I've grown up with that. Not everyone's going to grow up how I did around sound system. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I didn't. Around the sound system. And my sister was a dancer. My brother's a b-boy, hip-hop guy. So so electronic music from my sister being a dancer, hip-hop and reggae, soca, country music. So I think subconsciously I just went down a road of making music that I felt, sort of thing. Yeah. I don't want to complicate it for the sake of it, but I think if you're just say maybe you're brought up on different music, maybe it's a bit of rock or whatever. You might want to, if you're going to make drum and bass, or whatever, you might want the energy of rock. You don't have to make rock. You might want the energy of rock in your music, or you might want the energy of the music you listen to in your music. You make kind of meditation music or whatever. I think that might have come along when you started meditating a bit, maybe. Yeah. You know, and you can just take like you're saying, you can take vibes and whatever from literally anywhere. Is my mic gone off? You can take vibes from anywhere, and I think when you're taking your own vibes, what you've experienced over life, and what you're listening to or what you're experiencing, and put it into your music, that's where individuality comes in as well. And that's what you want when you're an artist, honestly, because if you're just going to go, I want to sound like this guy or that guy, and you're going to sound like that guy and everyone else. Yeah. It's a bit boring. That is. At least if you're doing your own thing with your own data, that's exciting. I think if someone's going to, whether I like a track or not, if someone sends me a tune, whether I like it or not, if I think it's a bit different, oh my God, this guy's doing something different. It's going to perk your ears up, and I'm going to go, enough respect to this guy. I know someone who might like this. Boom. But if it's the same as everyone else's tunes, I'm like, who cares? Yeah. So, and I think using your own data really helps, and yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
It's about feel for me. It's about every song you like. There's something about it that you like, and you like it because there's something you feel in that piece of music. Yeah. Remember, this is all energy. I'm not going to get all deep with it, but we're dealing with energy here, yeah, and it's about feeling. So, to kind of go back to what you were saying, it's about listening to what came before, and if you like it, ask yourself, why do I like it? What is it about this tune that I like? And capture that feeling and reinterpret it. Because that's all I've ever done. I've tried to just make music that comprises elements of all the other music that I like and I feel. You see what I'm saying? So I kind of understood what hip hop was before I even knew what it was called, in terms of the bits in the track where the instruments drop out and it's just the drummer. When the drummer links in, oh Lord, that's the piece. And then next thing I know, there's a whole thing where they're just isolating them drum bits. So, yo, this is what I'm talking about. And then I come from a Caribbean household, but my parents were more into the lovers rock type of reggae. And I like reggae, but when my older cousins started to introduce me to dub, I'm like, okay, this is like hardcore reggae now. You know what I mean? This is the real. So I'd take those elements from the dub, the breaks from the soul that I was listening to from when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, then got into dub around 12, 11, 10, and then got kind of hijacked those vibes and put them into the hip hop that I was starting to make at 14, 15. So to me, it sounded like I'm making like dub-wise breakbeat type music, dub-wise hip hop, you know, but you're just being influenced by what you heard before and you're taking the vibes and kind of replay. It's like you're taking a seed off a tree and then you're planting it somewhere else in a whole different field somewhere, different country, whatever, just to grow that tree in a different place. So, yeah, man, just absorb the energy, man, and then pass it on. Energy don't die, it only transforms, you know?
That's cool, bro.
I've reflected on this a lot. As a jazz musician, it's something that we have to do, like copy other jazz musicians to get good. But there's a real framing of this that I'm keen to share. I think when you're dealing with, interfacing with black cultures, what I've noticed is people fall into two camps. You're either in the community or the conquistador side. And I'll go into some details in terms of what I mean.
The what?
The conquistador.
Yeah.
Right,
The conquistadors came to the New World, didn't they? They're the people who were like invaded Mexico and killed all the Aztecs and stuff, and stuck a flag in the sand for Spain, and this is Spain territory. All right. The community side of things means that if you're going to become a hip-hop aficionado or jazz aficionado, you don't just stand on the side, and KRS talks a lot about this as well. You don't just observe and make notes. You get stuck in. And there's an understanding as a jazz musician that as many John Coltrane solos as I copy, I'll never sound like John Coltrane. I'm only going to sound like a better version of myself in that process because it's part of being in the culture. The conquistador thing now, to be really specific, and it's not just a white or black thing, but the conversation about cultural appropriation is really relevant here. Because there are people who just see music as a menu to just dip and take this little bit here and put that little bit and genre blend by 70%. It all happens here, and going back to your thing about feel, it doesn't happen here. So connecting with these musics, the people behind it, the stories, the communities, is going to make your efforts to be influenced by stuff sound more authentic, not just sound like I'm teething this, because it works for my agenda right now.
Certainly, it's a way to do it respectfully.
Can I just add that also as well, I think it's important to kind of, along with kind of researching the music, research what was happening in society at the time that this music was made. It will give you a lot of context as to what they were talking about. For instance, Marvin Gaye, that is tune, What's Going On. If you study what was actually going on at that time when he wrote the song, it gives you a context that then puts a lot of other music that was happening around that same time. It gives it a whole different perspective that you wouldn't have considered before. And it's hard to kind of put yourself there because obviously you can't. We haven't got time machines as yet.
But imagine trying to ban Kendrick Lamar's All Right without Black Lives Matter, without the context of that. It doesn't make any sense.
So without, because you can't physically put yourself in that time frame, you're having to rely on the descriptions of that time frame from other people. And I think that's another thing as well that I think is very important with music. It reflects and documents what's going on in society and allows subsequent generations to understand the world a little bit deeper because you've got a little bit of, you know, historical, artistic context to apply to the music. I don't want to go off on tangents, but yeah.
I love that. It's just digging in deeper and getting into the essence of things. And that's what we talked about right from the beginning, tracing things back to their essence to get that purest form of it can really be inspirational. It really can.
Yeah, like a roots or punk or something, you know what I mean? And
yeah, just getting into the essence, and even with the whole grime thing about the whole reason you had an angry youth and there was a message and there was an anger that was just coming out due to circumstances and politics at the time. Frankie, you talk about obviously, you know, the writer's block issue and inspiring people to go off and kind of consider other music. How would you recommend to the young creators here to kind of tap into different things and use it to contribute towards their own thing without just copying it?
Without just copying it? I mean, obviously, I'm going to suggest go out raving.
But that's a fit. But with that for a second,
for me, that's really important. Being actually out and about, experiencing those things, because I think, you know, when you've said about things like the feeling of the music and the contextualising the music. Obviously, as you've said, we can't go back in time, but we can contextualise music more if we hear it in a space that it's being designed to be heard in. So if we're going out to the club, I mean, for me, it's going out to the clubs or the festivals and feeling the music and being part of a community is absolutely massive. So I think, you've got to kind of be in it. As we've sort of said, really, you want to be out there and experiencing it. And I think also, you know, be open to getting out of your comfort zone as well. So going to a gig or going to somewhere that you wouldn't necessarily think, I'm going to go and, you know, listen to some spoken word, or I'm going to go to a metal concert. Just do it, because actually you won't realise how much that might influence what you actually are doing yourself and what you can take away from those things. So being open to experiencing other things.
I got something there. I went to, I've never been to, I went to see a lady called Ayana Johnson the other day. And I've never been to any, like, she's like a jazz, you probably know, right?
Yeah, well, she's a cellist, singer.
Yeah, so I was in Cleveland Rockers there as well. So she's like a jazz musician, but she's a cellist. But she's so good in the way she talks about her culture, and she, I don't know, she really sort of like tells you what she's been up to in her life and everything. And the way it was put together and arranged, it just blew my mind. I was sitting next to my friend going, obviously swearing, or going, what the hell is going on here? Because it blew my mind. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't got that sort of music at home, but it's probably the best show I've ever been to, easily. It was just madness. And that was like a cellist.
Yeah.
I ain't got any cello music at home. So
all the preconceptions would be like this.
It was just madness. I just thought I'd just go with my mate now, and it just blew my mind. This is like 3 weeks ago at King's Place in London.
So feeling it is a theme here.
Well, exactly.
It's mad. If I'd heard it on a CD, I'd have probably been whatever. Went there, it was just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. A show, going to a show, it's a big thing, like you're saying.
It is. It's so important. Like when we made some of our grime stuff, just going back to that, there's a club in Bedford called Club Cabana, which is a West Indian club, and it had a sound system in there by Cultural Roots, right? Now, they used to have reggae and dub nights there, but they would sometimes let us sort of book it out and put on grime, dubstep, well, weren't dubstep, and more drum and bass. When the whole grime sort of movement come about, I remember there was a track that me and Nina made, and it was it's called Take Time, probably our biggest track to date, 17, 18 years ago, as Macabre Unit. We made it in 2 hours on a blown Jamo speaker with a massive hole in it. We was really drunk. We finished it, and we took it to Club Cabana, and we played it on that sound system, and that was it. That was the start of Macabre Unit. Grime, 2 white lads in a room down London Road, a bit of a ghetto, drunk, run down to Club Cabana, played it on the sound system, and the bass, because they used to mute all of the tops and mids. I can still feel the vibrations now in places that I will not state in public. And I'm telling you now, like that there epitomises the sort of culture and the sort of cross-pollination of what being out there and experiencing sort of different styles and cultures of music and stuff. And that there was the start. And I remember Sticky being there as well. And we also played another track of ours. It was actually Niner's track called It's All About. And I'll never forget it. He was like, this is it. This is game changing. And that was the start of Macabre Unit's journey, you know. And yeah, if it wasn't for the Cultural Root sound system, that, to be fair, he was probably thinking, what, he's not playing on my system. But Colton got massively into it, started muting off parts, and he just hear, and it was like, wow, red stripe cans flying off the side, yeah, all sorts of stuff going on. But yeah, that was a very profound moment in life as a musician, really, for me. I'll never forget that. Crazy.
I'm just conscious, how much time do we have? 5 minutes. So, feel has been definitely a theme here, I think. I don't know who said it. It's various people. Good artists copy, great artists steal. I wouldn't necessarily, well, as Soweto said with jazz, imitation is actually a great way to learn. If you can actually imitate something perfectly, it's a great way to learn. Whether you go off and then actually put that out there as your thing.
It's like the two cardinal sins of biting on the one hand, which is a bit in jazz and in hip hop. You don't be a biter, but then you have to study your elders to get any kind of traction.
To get that influence, yeah.
Sorry to cut you.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, you know, definitely just going out and being inspired and going out. I mean, I don't know if, unfortunately, when I used to teach a lot of young people, a lot of them didn't go out to clubs and festivals. Some did, but a lot didn't. But just to go out and feel music, we don't live, it's not the first port of call now, whereas it used to be. We were talking about this earlier. You had to go out and find the music. You had to experience it in a club. And I think that is definitely a part that's missing for a lot of young people. So to go out and to feel the music and be in an environment where everybody's kind of just synced to the same frequencies, it's a special thing, and it really, really can inspire.
Well, yeah, because if you'd listen,
Come out the Matrix.
The other thing that's blowing my mind is you reminded me of a time when you had to roll with a crew.
Yeah, exactly.
20 man strong.
It was
Soul
crazy.
Solid were like
When we
nine, Wu-Tang were like 9 people in the one group.
When we went to One Extra, it was a bit of an awkward situation because they were trying to say that half of us had to sit in the car. But just going back to that, you know, listen to that track in the club, and that's what sort of set us off on our journey. If you listen to that track on your phone, it just sounds like a drum beat. You can't hear the sub. You can't hear nothing. There's nothing to it. It wouldn't have had the same impact. It wouldn't have set us off on our journey. But because it was played on that sound system at such a time, and the right people were there, we was off, you know. And One Extra certainly won't forget us.
Energy, because when I was coming through,
Yeah.
90s rapper, there was a group of us as well. That's how I'd heard about Scorsese and other people as well. We all had groups, and there's something about the energy of like, not just me talking about myself, but 4 man, 5 man saying, "Yeah, this verse is the best," and I hope that gets recovered in future because we're all in silos a lot more individualized. And if we can recover that sense of community collective.
I missed that a lot.
Yeah,
And it was fine as well.
Really good artists, and they helped me out. It's as simple as that.
Well, yeah, because we'd take up half the club's capacity, so we knew that if it was like, you know, even if one of our lads' bars weren't really up to scratch, the other 19 lads would jump in and go sick, and it'd be a good bar by the end of the night, so we'd be all right. And even a tune, if we put on a tune, it was like, oh, this one ain't one of the best ones. I put it up. They go mental. Next minute, it's on One Extra. It's fine.
Show never feels empty.
Yeah, exactly. There's not one here. Well, yeah, there is. I've got a few here, but they're all on the guest list, so sorry.
We have a video from Reggae singer Wavey that's answered. Couldn't make it today, unfortunately, sends his apologies, but has answered a few of the questions for a couple of minutes. Could we play the video, please?
I think young people are increasingly more aware of like the musical heritages that influence them nowadays. But there's still work to be done on it for sure. And, you know, it's good if you can go back to the root of something. You might find another way of interpreting it. So it's worth doing that research and doing that homework. Do you know what I mean? To find out where something actually came from. I think the genre and the influence for me that gets the least credit is the fast style chatting that started around Saxon sound system in the 80s, originated by Peter King and then continued on by the rest of the Saxon crew and a lot of other UK MCs, was the fast chat that actually started in London, and it went to like influence a lot of the Jamaican MCs and American MCs, which in turn I think influenced our own grime MCs and drill MCs that we listen to today. So I think for me, fast style chat is one of the least sort of, or one of the most undercredited parts of the heritage and the influence. I've definitely found that in passing on knowledge, and it's made me learn more about influences and, you know, the root of the genre of music that I'm into, which is reggae and dancehall. I've done research. It's been a great learning process for me. I thought I knew quite a bit, but it turns out that there's much, much more to find out, and that's definitely been of value to me. I think I will be a different vocalist because of it. I will approach things in a different mindset with, you know, having that knowledge. I think sampling has been the most influential production technique of modern times. You know, when people learn to sample beats and vocals and speed them up and stuff like that. So for me, sampling has been the single biggest influence over the last probably 30 years of music production, right across every genre, like hip hop, jungle, techno, you name it. You know what I mean? Sampling has been a massive part of that. I think the best way of teaching someone their heritage without them copying it is to just encourage them to go back and listen to certain tracks. Because I don't think, if you listen to a track, even if you try to copy it, it's going to have your spin on it. It's going to have something of you in it. I don't see a way that you could actually avoid that. So if you listen to an old Outrage track and try to recreate it, it's going to have your vibe. There's going to be something about the way you recreate that says something about you. And then, you know, if hopefully you'd want to do that as well. Hopefully you'd want to inject your own sort of spin on it and your own interpretation, which is good. And then from that, you go on to develop more original style, but that can be a part of your influence. Do you know what I mean? You'll hear it in there.
Cool. So I think we'll wrap it up there because, well, we could go on for hours and hours. It's been real nice. Thank you very much. And, yeah, go off, feel it, be inspired, and tap into the roots and culture, and the essence is the key takeaway, I think. Thank you very much to our panellists.